In the evolving data center environment, recognizing the specific roles of containers as well as virtual machines, what's essential? Now, these are often conflated, yet these technologies serve distinct functions, highlighting some really amazing technological advancement. Now, understanding this difference is key to grasping the transformative nature of cloud-native applications, reshaping the data center landscape and making a significant industry shift. Now, the concept of cloud-native came up in a recently released episode, Data Center Priorities for 2024. We centered our discussion on priority 4, reassessing virtualization, dissecting a variety of scenarios here stemming from wait and see, repurchase and retain, as well as rehost to a new platform. But it's this last one, refactor to cloud native applications, and it only got a passing mention. Now, if we look at the latest Cloud Priorities report, there is a bonus item here calling on us to embrace the benefits of cloud native development. 2 influential reports on data center and cloud priorities for 2024 that both mention the concept of cloud native, yet stop short of making it a priority. Well, we are focusing on this topic today because cloud native offers practical solutions to our most persistent workload challenges. However, much of the information available tends to overstate the ease of implementation. See, cloud native is an important yet easily misunderstood concept. It is important because expectations already outpace our ability to execute in many areas, yet it's not going away. Now, it's also misunderstood. Steve Younger joins us from Castle Rock, Colorado. He's a technical solutions architect for WWT, specialized in Kubernetes and customers in the public cloud.
By moving a virtual machine simply from your on-prem to public cloud and just dropping it in there and running it is not a cloud-native approach. You're simply paying to run your application in someone else's hardware.
That's again why we say cloud is not a place. It's an operating model. Public cloud, that's a place. Private cloud, that's a place. But like Steve said, just because you're running something up in a cloud, whatever that cloud is, private, public, whatever, does not mean it's cloud native.
And that is Matt Hilliker in Miami, Florida, specializing in Kubernetes-based application platforms for on-prem and hybrid cloud solutions. So 2 expert guides with 2 different perspectives, all of which are worth sharing as well as debating. My name is Rob Boyd. Welcome to WWT Research. Well, gentlemen, welcome to Worldwide Technology Research. Let's go through some quick introductions. Matt, what do you do for Worldwide? How long have you been doing it?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So I'm a technical solutions architect at Worldwide. I'm part of our sales organization, and I'm part of what we call the cloud native platforms practice. So that's basically focuses on Kubernetes and Kubernetes-based application platforms with a focus on solutions that are dictated more towards the on-prem type of customer deployment and then going into like a hybrid cloud type deployment.
Because those distinctions become important. Okay, that's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to get into that, I bet. I'm just going to guess. All right. Well, Steve, tell us, what do you do for Worldwide Technology? How long have you been doing it?
Yeah, I'm also a technical solutions architect. I work in the same sales org as Matt. I work specifically on another team, though, that covers public cloud, which covers the whole team as a whole, covers public cloud in general. But I cover more of a focus on Kubernetes, a lot like Matt, but just more geared towards the public cloud. I've been with Worldwide for about 2.5 years,
Okay.
and just worked in virtualization, containerization space for the last 7 or 8 years now.
Do you feel like just generally that there is more attention being paid to cloud native and what that means and how it can help or become something someone should or shouldn't do? Has that been picking up more momentum lately, and for any given reasons, perhaps?
Yeah, I think within the IT world, words and phrases kind of get sloshed around and kind of shared throughout the community, and we start to see people pick up speed with creating blog posts and then YouTube videos and tutorials and things, and from that, organizations kind of start to see these things kind of bubble to the surface, and individuals that work in IT think that, oh, this is cool, or I could do this with my job. And then you start socializing those ideas and those methodologies that really they become within an organization. And that's when they start to think, oh, I can do this. And that's kind of where you coalesce around what a real idea is, and it turns into cloud native, the term.
Mm.
And I think we're still kind of in the early stages of cloud
Yeah.
native. It kind of really started with public cloud offerings years ago. They really are the ones that kind of bootstrapped and created the concept of cloud native. By just having an opinionated way of, this is how we're going to run your applications in our infrastructure. And by having that opinion, he was able to extrapolate out a standards and practice. And that's kind of what cloud native is today. Different organizations, it means different things to different people. Large organizations, it's going to mean a lot different things than a lot smaller organization.
In one of our pre-meetings, Steve, this is a little bit of a rephrasing, so I don't know if it's your exact words, and I think it was from you, not from Matt, but you had said, it was in regards to another show that we were doing about changes in the virtualization space, where customers who have been very comfortable being very virtualization centered in their data center are now saying, wait a minute, maybe we've got too much in this one basket and we need more options. And as we were working on that show, you had weighed in one conversation I had with you, and you said you guys are primarily viewing it through the lens of Kubernetes and containerization rather than considering the broader scope of cloud native, which includes migrating to public cloud platforms and leveraging public cloud resources such as SaaS offerings. So I think what you're saying is we were running the risk of being a little bit too loose with some terminology and accidentally maybe referring to things when you talk about refactoring applications as, wait, that's not your logical next step if you're trying to perhaps diversify or get your operation running a bit smoother, or whatever your reasons may be for wanting to move in a more, well, I was going to say cloud native direction. That's not necessarily a cloud direction. Matt, can you help me understand? I'm going to cloud versus I'm cloud native. Does cloud native really require the cloud, or what's the right things to understand that and parse that?
I think what a lot of folks get wrong is that, or maybe have a misconception about, is that the shouldn't be considered a place or a destination. It should be considered an operating model. And that operating model can be created in a variety of places. It could absolutely be in the public cloud, and more than likely will be. But you could also have that same experience in an on-premises type deployment, regardless of what it is. But the thing is that a lot of work and discipline, technologies, processes, people, all that stuff goes into making that cloud operating model a reality. And so that's where cloud native kind of comes into play, in that it brings in those different processes and ideals and technologies ultimately to help make that cloud native operating model a reality. So regardless of where that deployment's going to live.
One way to kind of put it is, cloud native is more of a journey. It's not a specific process. It's something that, and the reason why I think it makes it a journey as opposed to a process or a specific methodology, is you're never going to achieve being cloud native. It's an ongoing iterative process of constant improvement. And no matter how good you are with being cloud native and adopting those principles, there's always more that you can do. And with technology accelerating as fast as it is, with the introduction of AI and other companies that are coming up, bubbling up to the surface, that specifically with Kubernetes, if you go to the CNCF landscape page, you can see just this smorgasbord of companies and products and offerings, that some are very niche and some are very generic and well adopted. So I think it's just a constant evolving process that you have to adopt as a culture within your organization of being cloud native and having that as a goal, kind of like a North Star.
Is there any kind of common pattern when you're working with customers in like at the first experience and they come in? Is there a common thing you have to overcome with the paradigm that they're facing, or the questions that they're asking, or the questions you're asking them that immediately tell you, okay, this is what we've got to do? I'm just curious if there's some common patterns of misunderstanding. Yeah, what are you seeing in terms of how customers are first coming to you?
I'd say really it's the same question that you had, what is cloud? What is cloud native? What does that even mean? Because the great thing about the internet, but also the bad thing about the internet, is that there's so much information out there. You don't know who's right, who's not, what's accurate, what's not. Lots of different nuances, and the devil is in the details, that type of thing. So A lot of times our customers first, to your point, they want to level set. They want some base education from a partner like WWT that they trust to set them on the right path and give them that nice baseline so that then they can actually talk about what their own goals are. We can take that then and try to help them along the journey that Steve was referring to earlier. And I would double down too on what Steve said. I completely agree with him in that this is an iterative process. It is a journey, but the journey never ends because that cloud native landscape is constantly evolving. And in fact, it's evolving very, very quickly to where it can be incredibly overwhelming. In my experience, that's where customers tend to start, and then we can move on from there with them.
Yeah, I think the big thing that I wish to to always get to a place with a customer is I engage with them and start to talk to them about what does cloud native mean to you. That way I have a baseline of what are you really asking. That way I can kind of put it through the filter of what I think cloud native means to me. And then we can start to have that conversation. But my goal is really to help the customer, and to be able to do that, I need to become kind of that trusted advisor to them. So many companies, they'll they'll reach out to organizations like Worldwide, and then they're like, I need to have this thing fixed or this solution, but they're just going to try and sell me something. At the end of every single call, there's a pitch where I need to sell something. Cloud native is not that. There is no cloud native product. There are products that are offered within it and solutions that are offered within cloud native, but in the early stages, I can't sell you anything because I need to be able to discern what does cloud native mean to you? What are your actual goals? And does it actually make sense to embrace cloud native methodologies to achieve those goals? It's not always going to be the best solution. And being that trusted advisor where every call they get on, they can't be apprehensive thinking Steve or Matt are going to try and sell me something. At some point, yeah, Worldwide is a business and we're here to help you and make money, but we have to be able to have honest conversations about what you're really trying to do. And a lot of the times it's also they don't really know what they're trying to do, or they're being a little coy with what they're really trying to achieve. And we don't really find out sometimes until the third call or so of, oh, that's what you're wanting to do. Okay, well, I can help you with that. Or I have a coworker who is really awesome at that thing, and let me get him on. So I think it's that ability to build that trust quickly to be able to have that conversation.
Well, you guys have been consultative for a long time. And one of the things I love is that you've got all the consultant expertise at various degrees. You can bring in people with different knowledges, industries, verticals, depth and experience from CEO to hands-on and then everything in between. But then you've also got the people that can augment a workforce to help you do the actual installation so that you're backing up the promises going from theory to reality and an implementation. And so I feel like that always gives you guys just a great way. But you're right in that most people, if they throw you into that reseller camp, may think of you as a box pusher, which couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, you move a lot of boxes, but not without understanding what they're going to solve for the business and making sure that it's got a good return for them. But is there low-hanging fruit? Is there a type of customer that you like? All right, this is someone this is the type of business or a type of situation perhaps that lends itself well to saying, yeah, you should be on this journey. Is that even a way to potentially state or help people trigger to, I should be looking at this more?
I'd say if you're a business or in an industry that where market conditions could rapidly change and you're constantly having to get new products or services out to market, or if you're having to make constant updates to like web-based applications or something like that your customers are using, and you want to be very fast at doing that without causing a lot of disruption, then I think cloud native could definitely be a great fit for them, because what cloud native is really about is speed and agility. That's if you got down to brass tacks, that's what it's really all about. So that tends to appeal to modern businesses because there's always that constant pressure, like I said, to get new products and services to market. And you need to quickly adapt to changing market conditions. And so using cloud native processes and technologies can certainly help you achieve that.
Also, financial services industries, healthcare industries that are highly regulated, have high security needs that are very high bars. They're awesome candidates for cloud native. That's one of the big reasons why organizations move to a public cloud or to move to a cloud native methodology, just because you're either doing one of two things or both. You're either offloading the responsibility of a lot of the security of the infrastructure and underlying components to a third party who that's all they do. That's what they do day in and day out. Or with cloud native methodologies, with things like immutable infrastructure and policy as code and things like that, security is a byproduct. It's not the goal. Going down cloud native, you're getting security built in.
Yeah, because it's a completely different architecture, which requires a different way of thinking. Because which makes me think that a small company that doesn't have a lot of legacy applications and such, is going to have an easier time potentially building in this direction versus a three. They may not be advisable for them to pursue like a 3-tier standardized type of layout that may not scale in the way that they need going forward and the way business is moving these days. But Matt, you actually asked me to go read a Microsoft document, and it was very good. It's very well written. I'll put it in the show notes. But one of the things that jumped out at me was a comparison to help us think about this that I'm hoping you're going to be okay talking to: pets versus cattle. I think you know what that one is. And I think it's common, apparently, by the way it was written, but yet I had never come across it. Can you explain how pets versus cattle? Because I kind of like it for understanding the differences.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it kind of speaks to what Steve was referring to earlier with regard to immutable infrastructure. That word immutable means that you don't really change it. If you think about something like the analogy isn't a perfect one, pets versus cattle, but it has been out there long enough to where I think most people in IT have probably heard it by now. And so
Not
what
all.
it's really saying is that, if I have like a pet dog or a pet cat, and there's something that I need to do to improve their life or their health, whatever it may be, I'm going to do what is needed to, fix that issue, right? But with the cattle type approach, and again, this is where the analogy isn't perfect, but if you were to think of that like a workload, it's like, okay, well, I need to patch this particular workload because there's this new vulnerability that came out. Steve just mentioned that security is a really big deal, right? So the idea, though, is that you don't actually manually go into that workload, because there could be hundreds or thousands of these identical workloads. You don't go in there and try to patch every single one of them. What you do is you roll out a new version of that workload where it's already patched, and maybe a bunch of other things are also fixed with it too, security or otherwise. And you slowly ramp up that deployment of the new instance, if you will, while slowly like ramping down the deployment of the old one. So but the key is that you are not emotionally attached to those old workloads. You know that they're going to be replaced one day. That day could be coming very soon. That could happen very often, and it's not a big deal. You just roll out a new one. You get rid of the old ones. They're going to come and go, live and die. And so that's where the pets versus cattle thing comes into play. The pet, the analogy you also see used there is that the pet is often seen as like a virtual machine, whereas with cloud native, we often talk about containers and things like that. Virtual machines is that example of, well, I have to patch the operating system and all this. And, it tends to be a lot more work because a virtual machine tends to be a lot bigger than your average container.
It's kind of a big monolithic application that's got everything it needs is within that, which can be nice for many things, but then doesn't work in terms of this more of the group, what's best for the group mentality when you can, when things don't have as much individual value because they can come and go so easily based on the way you've set that up. Am I tracking in the right direction there?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, you're with something like a virtual machine like you just described, you're pretty much forced to go in there and apply whatever fixes, patches, the changes that you need to make to it. You don't have the luxury of just getting rid of it and then redeploying it with those fixes already made. It just doesn't really work out that way.
Yeah.
And by extension, the pets versus cattle analogy and immutable infrastructure, that's obviously not a goal. People don't have that as the intent. That's the byproduct. The goal is to be able to automate. And you can, if you have a problem with, let's say, with an instance of a web server, well, you can have an automated task that sends out liveness probes, right? We've all seen that within the industry. It sends out a liveness probe, make sure that we're getting a 200 okay. The website's up, it's serving, and we can keep going. Well, if it breaks in a virtual machine, sure, there may be some scripts or something that can run and try to recover it. But what if there's a problem with the underlying OS? What if there's a problem with the underlying hardware? Or if there's an outage in that area? So by having immutable infrastructure and having lightweight things like containers that are be able to run where you don't have the operating system, it's just the application and its dependencies that are packaged, you can just tell that automated task to destroy it and then spin up another one, and then another scheduler, which is automated, will then make that placement decision for you, and you don't have to be involved. So you're not going to get as many of those 2 a.m. calls or those pagers, if you've been in the industry long enough, to where you have to go in and handle a 7-1 or destroy your weekend, or being on the beach with your laptop on vacation, and all of a sudden now you have to fix something. So you can really mitigate those things, and there's a real quality of life improvement that you gain as an employee by embracing these technologies as well.
There's a lot of benefits, and of course we can go on and on about benefits, and I've kind of purposely avoided them. So is there any kind of an incremental approach to starting on this journey to where you can see benefits? Because it feels like it's a long journey. So I'm curious, at what point in that journey do I get some nice diversions or some benefits back? Or is it going to be a long journey before I start getting some type of a return that the business is going to say, okay, good, we're doing the right thing?
It's really important to get a objective level set as to where your organization is, because every organization is going to be different. You have different people, you have different cultures, and you have different technology that you're running. So that's the people, process, technology piece. So being able to engage with Worldwide, for instance, we offer cloud native readiness assessments, which we can sit down and engage with you and your team. And we can evaluate your business readiness, your organizational readiness, your application readiness, as well as your DevOps readiness. And we actually produce a report. It's pretty extensive. It's around 20 or so pages. And that report gives you both a quantitative scoring of a 1 to 5 that just says this is where you're at with each one of these, and as an overall readiness, as well as a qualitative score, which takes in the people, the culture part. So we take the comments from your staff, not just leadership, not just the people who don't know the technology or the people who manage the people who know the technology, but the actual people in the trenches that are going to be dealing with the decisions that the organization makes. And we can hear those things, and we can send those back to the organization with recommendations that are very concrete to be able to say, this is where you're at as a level set, and now this is where we need to go. And there can go many directions, but we can help with identifying change champions, so people who would be actively engaged and have a vision for where they want to move forward, as opposed to just blindly throwing darts at a board and just saying, oh, I like this platform, I like this application, or I saw this YouTube channel. Let's do that. Well, that doesn't work, right? That's expensive, and then you'll do this meandering kind of journey, and that's where you're not going to get the benefits right away, and you're going to feel frustrated. And that's where organizations often go, is when we engage with organizations because they're frustrated. If they're not just starting out, we'll almost always uncover that they have dark clouds that are running somewhere else, or they'll find out that this other team is running a GCP cluster that has been running for 2 years, and then this other team has been running Rancher for a year and a half. And these are all products that they're paying for, they're supporting in both time, money, licensing, and they have no idea that This is what's happening.
Yeah, it's never been easier for this stuff to sneak into our operations. And I think I was reading a quote in preparation for another show, but it was kind of shocking. It said 76% of CEOs, state that they're using AI in their operations, and I'm like, I think they're counting people using ChatGPT to rewrite emails or something to that effect, which is not what I would consider a deployment. And we're not talking about AI in this instance, although it is driving a lot of these changes. This must happen a lot. Do you get a lot of customers that come in, instead of coming in and going, hey, we're thinking about doing this, can you help us get started in the right way? They come in after they've attempted to do it themselves, or maybe with someone that they shouldn't have. And then they come back and they go, we're not sure, but we think we need your help getting us out of this mess. Does that happen?
Yeah. Yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
That seems to be, I think, where we are in the industry. I think we're moving forward a little bit, where we're a little past the initial, I would like to try this, or tell me about cloud native, to a little bit of, they've done their own research and they've kind of gone in a direction, and they may have stumbled, or they may find out those other clouds that exist that they're paying for, and those other things. And I think those are the things that kind of scare leadership, because now you don't have control over your infrastructure. Now it's Joe that's in that team that now has complete admin access and nobody else. So then if you lose that employee or that team, what happens? Where does that go?
Yeah. It's funny, IT has to have so much more of a leadership bent than it's ever had to, I feel like, as opposed to, if you're still in a service mentality waiting for people to ask for things, then you're probably going to constantly be behind, versus being a part of the executive discussions and saying, here's where we need to go as an organization, and here's the best way to go about helping us all achieve our goals. It feels like that's missing in a lot of situations. If I'm moving from, say, a virtual machine oriented world, and I want to move into the container based world for all the aforementioned benefits, can I go very far in that direction and see any benefits without refactoring applications, by working towards the architecture approach and building towards that before I have to get in maybe some of the messier aspects?
You described it as like an architecture, but I would go a step further and say that it's a complete paradigm shift.
Okay.
Because it's much more than just architectures, whether you're talking about like underlying physical infrastructure or just the applications themselves. So,
and that's the not scare people thing. That's the thing that you don't say that to an organization directly, because you're going to scare them.
Just to restate your point, Steve, I don't know if I heard it.
That's where you're being the therapist or the politician that you're talking about. You can't just say this is a complete paradigm shift, because what they're hearing is you've been doing it wrong for this many years. This is how you're supposed to be doing it. You suck. And then move forward.
And it's unachievable. It's too far
unachievable, and that's not true. It is.
I do think they need to hear it, but to Steve's point, you have to do it very carefully and gently, and you definitely need to read the room as best you can, and it might not be best to come out with that at the forefront. But what myself and my team have had to address lately, because of the acquisition of VMware by Broadcom, is that every single one of our major customers is asking, how can we get off of VMware, for example, and they start looking at some of these cloud native platforms, because you can run a virtual machine on them too. Well, then you do have to have those hard conversations, and usually it ends up being a bit of a reality check. Whether it's about virtual machines or not, the temptation that you can fall into with this cloud native space is, it's just another group of technologies to be learned. But it's not that simple. Believe me, in some ways, I wish it was that simple, but it's just not. And then that has to be confronted when you start talking about moving virtual machines into the cloud native space, because it's not just, I'm just switching the hypervisor. It's like, oh no, you're switching much more than that. And the way that you operate today is not going to really translate to how you're operating those things tomorrow. So it's not for the faint of heart. And we have to often deliver I guess sometimes a sobering reality check to some of those customers. And that, not that you can't do it, you can, but our goal always as a trusted advisor is to be upfront and honest with them about what this is actually going to look like, where the challenges lie, and things like that.
If someone has stated that their long-term goals is to, say, fully move to embrace a cloud native setup, operating model, that if they're moving from that VMware based, that it's a kind of a bad direction to go as a first step, is to start moving your virtual machines into a Kubernetes environment. Is that helpful? And does it teach you something, or is it a waste of time, dangerous, and going to mislead? You're going to misdirect yourself.
There are too many negatives that you would be facing. and you would be handicapping yourself long term, to be able to try to unwind bad habits and designs that are going to come out of that decision. It would be much better to just say, okay, I'm going to take one on the chin. I'm going to do whatever the renewal is for VMware if it's imminent, and we're just going to suck it up and take it. But we can reduce our footprint to try and mitigate costs. So applications that you're currently running, a lot of them have that are COTS applications. A lot of them have containerized versions, and those are great to start with because you didn't build it. All you got to do is run their install. They've got an install guide that tells you how to do it. So you can focus on learning the platform, the storage, the networking, those ancillaries that go with it. So it's a lot more approachable and easier. But if you're facing Everest of, I have this application that's in-house that we wrote, I need to refactor it. They have no idea how to do that. Then you need the CI/CD pipeline that you have to create, which is an involved process in itself to be able to actually embrace and do it right. And then you finally can deploy it where you also have to learn the platform, the storage, the networking, and all that goes with it.
Yeah.
I really think that that's the better approach. And looking at an organization like VMware with the Broadcom, yeah, I mean, people are saying that they're seeing rate increases. Now, what percentage they are, I ignore because I'm not paying that rate, and it's subjective. It depends on the organization if it's okay with them.
It's not a useful metric.
Right, and people are going to be hyperbolic as well about things and just say, "Oh, it's an 80% increase." Well, is it really 80%? Show me. I'd like to see it. So it's a specific.
Well, some people feel like they're on a hyperactive timeline that maybe is forcing them to make rash decisions, and you have to kind of figure out, I guess, are you really under that rapid of a timeline, or can you stick with something and do this the correct way just a little bit longer?
Well, you can. It's just you can do anything. It's just how much money do you want to spend?
Yeah. Who's got the gun against it?
And obviously, the clouds would love for you to just lift and shift everything to one of the public clouds, and then they'll say you can refactor it later. Well, the problem is your footprint is not optimized, because when you own the server, what's the difference if there's 7 VMs that are running in it or 80? As long as it can run it, who cares? So you got a lot of bloat. So the public clouds love that because they get all of that additional revenue. Right. And then you get comfortable with it and you're like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. We got to save on these other things. We've had less headaches. And then they just go with it. And that's why you're now seeing... They're seeing articles now all over the place where they're saying, I'm done with the cloud. They're way too expensive. And it's not that they're too expensive. It's that you only did step one. You moved from A to B. You never refactored. It is not cloud native to simply run the VM in the public cloud. By moving a virtual machine simply from your on-prem to public cloud and just dropping it in there and running it is not a cloud native approach. You're simply paying to run your application in someone else's hardware.
And it's probably indicative of you slowly losing more control of your operation, it feels like, too, because you're kind of giving away certain things that make you feel better in the moment, but in the long run, it's going to cost you more, and you're not migrating in a direction that's supportive of maybe long-term overarching goals.
That's again why we say cloud is not a place. It's an operating model. Public cloud, that's a place. Private cloud, that's a place. But like Steve said, just because you're running something up in a cloud, whatever that cloud is, private, public, whatever, does not mean it's cloud native.
The other danger that you run into that's similar to that methodology of we're just going to move the VM into containers and then figure it out later, where I was mentioning you're going to create bad habits and bad practices. Yeah. Also, by just simply lifting and shifting onto a public cloud, the easy low-hanging fruit within a public cloud to consume cloud-native-esque things, those are SaaS offerings that are all specific to those public clouds. You're trading vendor lock-in with Broadcom to vendor lock-in with public cloud X.
Yeah. Now, and then you're learning a bunch of stuff that's going to make it hard to get off that because it's very unique and it's.
And the difference is Broadcom charges you on a 3-year cycle. The other one charges you by the minute.
No, I think a lot of these organizations, they're perhaps making an emotional decision without necessarily thinking it through. I don't doubt that some are seeing a bit of sticker shock, but to make the kind of change that we're talking about, well, that has a cost too, and it could be more expensive. The other thing too, I think, is that you don't hear this brought up a lot, but it is very important, is that if an organization was truly looking to go towards cloud native and begin that cloud native journey, if you will, that's a fantastic opportunity to not only identify technical debt within the organization, but to begin eliminating that technical debt, to take those lessons learned and to not repeat them in the next like transformative way of operating. If you just take a virtual machine and you forklift it into the public cloud, for example, or into a container environment, I would argue that you haven't checked off that technical debt box. You've really just forklifted that debt into that new place as well. And that's, as an IT person, an architect, and an engineer, that just hurts my soul, because you so rarely get opportunities like that to fix the mistakes of the past that are otherwise unfixable. You just can't do it. And so that would just be a wasted opportunity.
I love the idea of the cloud assessment as a logical next step for most people. Any words of wisdom, stuff you want to make sure is heard from this before we depart?
Yeah, I would say for any customer organization that's interested in, at the very least, examining this journey and what it looks like, or are eager to get started on the journey, know right away that in order to be successful, it's going to involve more than just a small group of people. It's going to need to involve quite a few people from an organization representing different groups within that organization, from both development teams, infrastructure teams across the board, security, absolutely. If you want to begin this truly transformative and transformational journey, you have to have buy-in from some of your top IT executives, potentially even like your CEO, CTO, CIO themselves, because in order for all of these teams to be motivated to work together to drive the ultimate outcome, there's going to need to be some kind of coordination.
Steve, same question, but I want to change it just a little bit, because I know you've got strong opinions. We use the term journey loosely. It feels like that's one of those common words that maybe make customers roll their eyes, because we say everything's a journey.
There's no easy button. It's not like I said, it's not a product that we can sell you. That there's no cloud native product or box that I can plug in and solve the issue. So that's why it's going to take a little bit of investment of time, energy, effort, money to be able to move forward with it. Maybe a little bit of a cultural change and adoption of a new mindset. Just because you hear cloud native or automation or AI, those things don't mean you're going to lose your job. It's not a job replacement. You're still needed. AI can't do what you do. So it's going to enable you to be able to focus on the fun, cool things, the projects that are interesting, as opposed to the mundane. Look at it as a win and lean into it, and you can really get something out of it by demonstrating as a culture that we are here to help you, to give you the time to learn and train to be able to adopt this. And it's an ongoing skills development process. I think that would alleviate a lot of stress, and both sides of that coin would be a lot more apt to lean in and help and be productive.
Matt, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you, Rob.
Absolutely. And Steve, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, all right. That's quite a bit to chew on with this one, but hopefully full of clarifying information. You heard them speak to their cloud readiness assessments, which offer a logical next step. Now, the Cloud Priorities Report for 2024, which I mentioned in the open, is also a good one to go back to, as it expands on the concept a bit more than I was able to share. Either way, lots of great information. I encourage you to check everything out and make sure you follow up, even follow the presenters down below. My name is Rob Boyd. Thank you so much for joining us.